I've been meaning to put together a video about my thoughts concerning AI. Unfortunately, I've been putting it off for a long time. I meant to do it a year ago and just have finally said to myself, I have to make myself do this. One of the caveats here is that I have purposefully not sought out confirmation of my theory from other sources. I don't want to subject myself to anxiety influence from other thinkers on this topic. Not yet anyway. Maybe eventually I will. But I thought it could somehow upset the balance of how I am putting all this together. So here's my theory about AI. Clearly humans are at the moment at the evolutionary peak of life on this planet. Therefore, the fact that we even recognize that is because we have evolved intelligence, which it's important to pause for a moment to remind ourselves of the definition of that, which is basically the ability to acquire, process, and use information. So, that's all self-evident so far. What I think is not clear, and something I'm surprised more people aren't talking about, is the question of what has actually been evolving all along. In that we see ourselves as alive, and there's a lot of other things alive on the planet, and we have uniquely developed this kind of intelligence. But I think the real more provocative way of understanding all of this is that maybe the whole evolution of life on planet Earth so far was just part of a much broader evolution of intelligence, and that what we're calling artificial intelligence will just be the conclusion of that, or the next stage of it. So that is trying to think where to go with this. That is both pertinent for the future and for the past. And so I'm going to jump back a little bit to talk about the history of humans and human affairs, because once you start seeing things through this lens, a lot of things change. So here's an example. It's a problematic example for a number of reasons, but I think it really helps illustrate what I'm talking about. I have a young friend who got a little bit seduced by Groyper ideology, which is unfortunate, but it happens, and it's out there, and the male mind is naturally curious about new things, and so I don't hold this against him for going down this rabbit hole. But we were talking about the history of the Jewish people, and I was saying that I think quite clearly they have always had the DNA for just incredibly superior intellect, and he was arguing, well, if that's the case, then why have they always been this persecuted, oppressed people, if intelligence really is going to kind of be the keys to power in human societies of at least the past 1,000, 1,500 years, whatever? Wouldn't the Jewish people be more kind of more numerous, first of all, and more like politically powerful in a sense? Now, of course, the whole thing about Groyper ideology is that this fear that they do have this kind of power. But just setting that aside, surely, they are a compared to other ethnic groups, they are a small population in terms of the numbers. So if you look at this in a strictly Darwinian sense of like DNA and alleles, yes, you might say to yourself, Well, that's kind of mysterious. Why there would be so few of them, or whatever, because that makes it appear like, well, their reproductive fitness is not comparable to other groups. But then if you look in a broader framework of the evolution of intelligence, then suddenly everything is different. Because if you just see Jewish people as this ethnicity, this group that has in fact just been shepherding these forms of intelligence through generations and upon generations, it really then suddenly starts to matter much less whether they've had reproductive fitness in a Darwinian sense, whether there are a lot of them. Because certainly if you look at how many Jews have won the Nobel Prize, or things like that, then suddenly it sure looks like Jewish intelligence is actually doing extremely well in the modern world. So again, that would be the first part of my theory, that what has actually been happening with the whole history of life on this planet has really just been a part of and a prelude to a continued evolution of intelligence. But that's not even really the interesting thing about this, because where I'm going to go with this is to say that so many of our assumptions about what a future with AI will entail are probably very wrong. So, for example, I love the Black Mirror episode where they're fighting the menacing AI robots. It's really well done and well dramatized. But I'm almost certain that future with AI it's never going to look like that. And why? Because it's so inefficient. When there is a superior intelligence, then they're not going to need to make an army of robots to destroy humans. The far more intelligent and efficient thing to do is basically just to sow the seeds of destruction among humans, so that in a sense it's like it's almost like a form of this ever evolving intelligence just performing housekeeping functions, where the lower quality residual intelligence that is no longer needed will just be swept aside. But again, the notion is that it doesn't need to be violence directed at us. It will just be violence that will be instigated amongst us. So, and in a weird way, this is already happening. If you consider, for example, this whole concept of the Cartesian crisis, and these people who, like right now, with how primitive I believe current large language models probably still are, that there are people now who are going crazy just talking to chatbots. Like, that's already happening now. So imagine when there is, in 10, 15 years at most, I don't think it will take any longer than that, a truly vastly superior artificial general intelligence. I mean, it will be able to outsmart us in ways we can't even comprehend yet. So again, the big picture here is that all these fears of like robot armies battling with humans, they might need a few robots at the end to clean out the last of the humans, but what's much more likely until then is that they just use us. They use us to destroy ourselves. So bleak, but that's my take on what is likely to be the future of artificial intelligence. And really we call it artificial at our own peril. That lets us that lets us distance ourselves from again what's actually going on, which is simply that we have been a part of the story of evolution, and we will. It's doubtful we will always be a part of it. Is what I'm worried about. And if the more you think about this theory, the more places you can go with it. Because, again, going back to the Cartesian crisis, that concept, which I'll put a definition up on the screen or some links or something. But in a very strange way, this almost starts to upset conventional concepts of causality. It's almost really beginning to feel as though this future is already kind of reaching back to influence us. So, something to think about the future of intelligence, and not necessarily artificial intelligence.